invest in people in the long term, there has to be a mutual understanding.
Hustle hard, hustle hard. Closed mouths don't get fed. Thinking strategically, but acting like a gorilla is the kind of marketing that's small. When it innovates very little, it's highly risk averse, and it takes the
Some of the things that I told you, I'd share a lot of stories in this class. And when we think about becoming an entrepreneur, it doesn't necessarily mean going into business ourselves, meaning we have to be the sole proprietor or the 100% owner. There's many different ways that we can partner with other people or candidly work with another entrepreneur, help them build value in their business and have a trajectory towards ownership is actually a really cool path. And for me, I always consider myself to be a good number two, meaning I like to partner with visionaries, people who have a vision of the future, and I help them make that vision happen. Of course, at this point in my career, I wouldn't help them make that vision happen unless there was some level of ownership or equity that was possible. But you can very well do that with other entrepreneurs. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to be the one taking the risk and putting your name as the spokesperson for the organization. It could just be that you're helping them build a venture, build an enterprise, and you're following them or you're along for the ride. That is an entrepreneurial journey for sure. I would also advocate for anyone who is thinking about doing that or is also doing that, that you would have a pathway towards ownership, like I said. But because sometimes you can get betrayed in relationships like that. And I know that's not what Mia was saying. I think Mia was just explaining that her friend was really inspiring and encouraging to her. But I'm just kind of putting it out there that if they were to work together, or if Mia was to say, take the concept she was learning in this class and draw out like the assignments that we have, she was going to use her friend as a sort of as a case to build on, to sort of help her out for free, essentially, and then potentially work with her friend or help build the business for her friend. That there's some discussions or conversations to be had in the beginning of that relationship, so that we understand what to expect. It's fascinating. So a lot of times I'll just kind of make this one point because I think it's interesting, is that people will engage in business transactions together, but there's no agreement upon the start of these engagement of business transactions as to how this thing's going to work if we start getting some success. And what those things are, they're actually called they're partnership agreements, or they would be operating agreements. This is what I'm going to do. This is what you're going to do. And if we just kind of agree on this at the beginning, if one of us kind of goes astray and decides to run away to Costa Rica with a bunch of money and never come back, like what happens? How's it going to work? The practice is to start thinking entrepreneurially and start practice or start thinking through some of these things when you frequent these establishments and in your place of work. Because as we go throughout this class, we'll probably highlight a bunch of different business models and examples just like that one. So you start putting on your lens of strategic thinking as an entrepreneur, because this class will help you build your strategic thinking. Because the more strategic we can think in the beginning phases of a venture or along this process, we have time to kind of zoom out and look at the business from a conceptual perspective, because we're not tied into the business. We're looking at it from a big perspective. We are then able to think a little bit more strategically. So that was a good example. So thank you for bearing with my lack of technology when I was on the road on Tuesday. I'm so very happy to be home. The Iowa trip was a long one, and it was a wonderful one. I had a talk today with the students at high school students at Robert Morgan, and it was with the Mexican American Council, and there were about 30 students, and we talked about entrepreneurship. And the video that we watched, I wanted to just kind of briefly show you to kind of warm us up into the conversation we're going to have tonight. And I can't describe to you how true I believe these assertions to be about failure and about how failure essentially is a means to success. So I don't believe we got to this slide last time, but I just want to show you what I mean by this. And also, I want to give you the opportunity in this class to be a grounds for failure. In the US and in general, a lot of times we look at failure and success as a dichotomy. Like one is completely different than the other. When we think about the Super Bowl last year, we think about the people who won the Super Bowl, the success, the trophy winners, but we don't necessarily think about those who won the divisional playoffs, meaning the division. And those who won the division is a big deal. And just because you won the division, you went to the Super Bowl, let's say you played in the Super Bowl and you lost, you still overcame a lot of challenges and you learned a lot and the program got better, highly likely. And then at the same time, if you lost in the divisional championship, you still got to the divisional championship and you improved, you got better, you understood where you were. So my point in saying this is that the way in which we want to look at failure in this class is not as a dichotomy, like you must succeed or you must fail. Failure is a means to success. Failure is a pathway to success. My point here is to say the more you fail, the more probability that you will succeed in the future if you learn from your mistakes. There is no successful, enduring entrepreneur that has not failed numerous upon numerous times. It doesn't exist. And if you just, for instance, started your first business at the age of 12, or let's say 18 when you were legally capable, and you hit a home run and you became a multi-millionaire, I just want to tell you that that likely has never and will never happen. And the highly likelihood is that 18-year-old, let's call this person, say Justin Bieber, was practicing their skills by the time they were 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and likely failed along the way. Just because, say Justin Bieber is successful at a young age, that doesn't mean that he hasn't failed multiple times. And my point is that we should look at failure as a means and a pathway to success. Okay, so I just want to tell you a brief story about what happened in Iowa. And I kind of guess this is going to segue into empowerment and transformation, which are the next two slides. Is that when I traveled, I fronted all of the money. So in my consultancy, I work with clients where I have to pay for all of my travel costs ahead of time, and I get paid after I perform the work. So in traveling, it costs $800 for the flight. It costs $200 to reserve the car. It costs another $250 for the hotel room, and then of course my time is worthwhile as well. And the work that I was going to do on site needed to happen that day. So I was traveling on Monday night, and I had a layover in Dallas, and my flight in Dallas was 4.5 hours delayed. So I was in the Dallas airport until about 11:45 p.m. on the night before I had to be at a client at 8 o'clock the next morning. And so I'm in Dallas, and my client is in Iowa. This is a long way away. And so I was obviously working to try to resolve this problem. And eventually the plane came and we got onto the runway. And at midnight, we were about ready to take off. And prior to getting on the plane, I had to call the rental car company, and I had to explain to the rental car company that I was going to be very delayed, and that if they can please wait for me with my rental car so that when I get in, I have a means of transportation to get to my final destination, which by the way was 2 hours from the airport in which I was landing. So I knew at this time that I wasn't going to get to my hotel until 4 o'clock in the morning at the earliest. And then I had to wake up, 2.5 hours later to deliver to, a very important client. So in this process, and the purpose of me sharing this story, I was on the plane. I still had no control, and I didn't know when I called the rental car place. They told me that I had to be there by 2 o'clock, or that they weren't going to have a car for me. So at this time, we still weren't taking off, and so I said to myself, I need to make sure that I'm prepared for whatever it takes. And so I got to my end destination, which was Sioux Falls, North Dakota, just in time to get the rental car. I got in the rental car and drove to a place I'd never been before, which was 2 hours from Sioux Falls in the pitch black, and I'm completely exhausted. I had woken up at 4 o'clock the morning before because I had to take my daughter to school and I had to get a workout and all this stuff. And I ended up getting into the hotel. I didn't even think I was going to get into the hotel because it was so late. And I thought I was going to have to sleep in my car. But I got into the hotel, into my room, and I passed out in bed for about a 2 hour nap, essentially, in order to then wake up 2 hours later and deliver to a client. And it turned out afterwards that this client was an extremely important client, and that the legacy of this particular client with what they do and how they do it, it was one of the most important deliveries I've ever given. I did well, let's put it that way. So the purpose of me telling this story is that it would have cost me about $3,000 if that meeting did not take place. I would have had to assume the risk of that $3,000 and would not have invoiced the revenue, and would have had to ate the cost in order to just, continue on with my life. So this was the risk that I played. But in playing that risk, I had to sacrifice, I had to commit, I had to work very hard. But at the same time, it worked out. And now I feel better because of it. So this is a personal story that I identify with that video, because there's no chance that if I wasn't the managing principal and the owner of this consulting company, that I would have endured such stress and I would have grown so much to try to solve those problems along the way. So this goes back to the power and the empowerment of entrepreneurship and small business. And to be empowered by a business, to be empowered by being able to create your own job, to be able to create your own future. And empower, by the way, means giving one power, giving somebody else power. The empowerment, which is how I teach entrepreneurship, I teach entrepreneurship as empowerment, small business as empowerment. It's one of the most empowering phenomenons to ever exist. To create your own wealth, to create your own sense of pride and self-worth, to create your own identity, to create your own facilities and operations, to create jobs for others, to create your own contribution to the world, and to create your own ability to give back. Every single thing on this list essentially is the essence of what empowerment means. A lot of times empowerment is used in workplaces to say, I empower people to dress however they want. I empower people to work from home. I empower people to, come in late. This is a fool's game when it comes to empowerment as compared to what it means to be an entrepreneur. True empowerment is allowing people to unleash their entrepreneurial potential. My goal in this class is to empower you, not by telling you you can do something or marking you absent or present or grading your assignment. My goal is to empower you to unleash your entrepreneurial potential. And that is how I teach and what entrepreneurship is all about. And I'm sure that the story that I told and also that video, you can see in the essence of these failures and the essence of these struggles, overcoming them is in itself empowering. So moving from empowerment now to transformation. So entrepreneurs are, and entrepreneurship and small businesses are transforming markets. Every single example that we gave with Keg South and with Bird Bowl and with some of the business that is shipping and receiving from Ecuador, these businesses are changing the way things happen. They are providing resources and products and services to people that they've not ever gotten before in places they've never been before. So transforming markets, transforming business practices, transforming industries, transforming oneself. This is so very important. Often we say that the entrepreneur or the business owner shapes and creates the venture. Meaning in this class, we're going to create an opportunity, we're going to create a market, all this kind of stuff. We think that we're shaping and creating the venture, but in reality, the venture is creating and shaping us. That is transformation. It's creating and shaping us by pursuing this opportunity, by starting this venture, by consulting a business owner and seeing the things that they deal with and seeing how we can add value to their business and their life and really trying to be empathetic to their perspective. We are the ones that are changing, not the business. The business is changing us. The business is just the avenue to change. I think that's a powerful one, how we can change, transform ourselves by pursuing business opportunities. Transforming families. I mean, a lot of the stories that we heard is how businesses have transformed families. I think it was Mia who explained, no, it wasn't Mia. Mia's friend was the one, I think it was Sabella, that mentioned in the chat that her father was in business and struggled at first, but is now doing a lot better. And likely she has seen her family also transform because of that. So businesses transform families, transforming communities. Often go into, I will go into these workshops, and I do workshops with a multitude of entrepreneurs at the same time. There's 40, 50 of them there. And often they come from places of disadvantage in a sense. So they come in and I ask, I say, what do we all have in common? And we all have a dream. And that's what we have in common. We have a dream. Okay, cool. And so about your dream, what is your goal? Is your goal to make profit? Is your goal to get rich? And some of them are like, yeah, kind of whatever. But a lot of them, if you really think about it, if you really ask and inquire about why they're here, almost all of them have a reason beyond themselves, have a reason that is embedded in a community. They want to do right with their community. They want to do right with their church group. They want to do right with their family and friends. They want to do right with, they believe that they can make a difference. They want to impact change. So this is the purpose of a lot of these companies. If you ask them a couple of questions leading into that. So we'll say, okay, why are you in business? Well, to make money. Why do you want to make money? Well, because I want to help my family. Why do you want to help your family? Because my family's struggling. Well, why is your family struggling? Because they don't have jobs. And then if you go there and say, and I can employ them in my business, then they say, this is why I exist, to employ people in my family and my community in my business so that they can be empowered, so that they have money, so that they can help build my community. And these are the reasons why entrepreneurs pursue opportunities. And this ties directly into chapter 2. And the reason why I'm spending time on this, because this will tie into your pursuit of an opportunity as well. Always asking yourself, why are you doing this? What brings you to this opportunity? Why you? Why this time? These are all opportunity driven questions. So I'm going to get past some of this. I want to explain the definition that we'll use multiple times in this class. And it's an important definition because it has some key words in it. What is entrepreneurship? What is small business? Well, small business entrepreneurship, let's put it that way, is the process of creating value by bringing together a unique combination of resources to exploit an opportunity. So there are some key words in here and they're underlined. Everything is a process. And although you're right in saying process, I want to add on to and elaborate your reason. If you have a process of doing something, Santiago, I'm assuming you can write that process down. Is that correct? Could you teach somebody else how to do it? No, because it's now tangibilized and the process can be given or transferred to others. So the most important word here is process. Entrepreneurship is taught as a process. And the process is what's going to help you create value. And I'm going to help you realize the process. And one of the first aspects of the process, which I keep alluding to, is this assignment on Thursday night, is starting to look around your world, starting to do some self-reflection, opportunity. I mean, I know, Santiago, you said you're in business now and you have a business and there's certain aspects of the pizza company that didn't work out well. So when you decide what opportunity you're going to use in this class, ask yourself the question, why? What is it about this opportunity? Why now? Why me? And if you really understand those questions, you're beginning the process off well with efficacy, with strength. And so anyways, process is good, creating value is good. Combining a unique combination of resources is the thing. So all of us here have computers, iPhones. We likely have access to Miami-Dade College resource library, which is a big one, which we'll use in this class. We all have each other. These are all unique combination. These are all resources. We have social resources, we have technological resources, we have informational resources. And just with these things alone, people have started multi-million-dollar companies with less than what we have right now. So my goal too, in not only helping you identify an opportunity, but helping you see the resources that you have all around you and how to leverage these resources to create value for customers. So this is why I love this definition, because this definition really breaks down a lot of the steps, which we're going to look at next, in what we're going to be doing in this class. And a lot of what we're going to be doing in this class is going to be obviously identify an opportunity, obviously develop the concept and a business model, obviously determine the resources, and then it's going to be up to you whether or not you take it from here in your further studies at Miami-Dade College or elsewhere of how you're going to acquire these resources necessary and how you're going to launch the venture, manage the venture, and grow. Also, we're going to be talking a little bit about this as well. I mean, we'll be talking a little bit about this, but these steps cannot be avoided, and these steps can certainly be redone. So let me try to explain this better. This makes it look like entrepreneurship is a linear process. It's not. Certain businesses start at different times by different people for different reasons, and it's a cyclical process. Yeah, of course, we want to start with the opportunity, we want to develop a business concept, we want to determine required resources, but that doesn't mean that once we get to launching the venture that we're not going to start over again and we're going to identify a new opportunity for a new revenue driver that helps the business, and that we have to build a new business model because we just changed our business. And so this is why it becomes a cyclical process and not a linear process. But this is the easiest way to depict the process, and I'm sure this will make sense to you as we continue to study it and look at it. But I'm curious, I'm going to pause here. If you see this process, does this make sense to you? Is it logical? Do you have any questions about this? Okay, so when I first learned about this process, and this is not me who came up with this process, these are entrepreneurship scholars that have existed now for a long time. It changed the way I look at entrepreneurship. It made me realize that I too can be a person that can create a multitude of ventures and do it over and over again. I can duplicate this, and it's a powerful concept, and I want to make sure we understand it in its entirety. And I also want to make sure that we understand how these three things here don't require any resources. Think about it. You're identifying an opportunity, you're developing a business concept, and you're determining required resources. None of this says you need to spend $1,000, $200, or you need to create 6 websites and you need to have 10 Instagram pages. All this says we need to think through these things before we begin acquiring necessary resources. Imagine if somebody didn't think through these concepts here and they were given $5,000. Do you know how quickly one can lose and squander $5,000 on Facebook ads and do nothing with it? Or how quickly one can sign a lease for an office space that's $1,000 a month and just lose all of their money because they have no revenue coming into their business? If they don't do step one, step two, and step three well, it doesn't matter how many resources you have. You will lose it. The business will eat it up and it will be gone. Yeah, it goes back to that element of, and it's hard to use the word failure, but it goes back to the element of what you learned in the past and how you're going to build off of that platform of learning in the past in order to excel into the future. So some of the most successful business people out there are the ones that have stepped up to the plate and swung numerous times, meaning they've hit doubles, singles, they've struck out a few times, but now they know how to bat in the major leagues. They know how to approach the plate or to metaphorically approach the process of business creation and business ownership a little bit differently. And I'll share one with, and thank you for sharing that. A business that I consulted started a cleaning company. It was called like Clean Sweep. And when I say consulted, I worked with them as a graduate student to help them grow their business. And they started with residential cleaning. And the reality of with residential cleaning is it's a commodity. Everybody can do it and they compete on price, all this kind of stuff. And they realized that pretty early. But the fact that they entered the corridor, I mean, they got in the game and they started trying to get customers and cleaning people's homes, they started to realize that this was a losing battle to go to residential cleaning and that to be their only source of value. So what they did is they also decided that because they were pretty good residentially, that they were going to pursue commercial cleaning and office building because they knew that the businesses had a little bit more money and that the places of work would be a little bit easier to clean at a bigger scale. So they pursued commercial cleaning and they were able to get a few contracts. And then from there, they decided that they still were in somewhat of a commodity business, kind of as you mentioned, that is, there's many people that can do commercial cleaning. And they decided to pursue a certification to start cleaning and not cleaning, but disinfecting medical facilities. So they went into doctors' offices and hospitals, and as you know, they take blood, and this is very important that they're disinfected in an appropriate way and that it's done right. And the amount of money they could charge once they're certified for that kind of service when they're qualified was substantially more. So they went from let's go clean people's homes to now let's clean people's places of work or office environments. Now let's have a certified way of cleaning specialty medical buildings. And they got so good at it, believe it or not, they then decided to open up a training facility to train other cleaning companies on how to get into the medical cleaning business. So now they have a multitude of revenue drivers, and their biggest revenue driver is their training. And with training, there's not a lot of cost associated with it. Why? Because it's just labor. And you just show up and you teach people and they pay you and you don't have to buy things. You might have to share some books and materials, but this is in essence of starting down the path of the process. And once you start down the path of the process, which is the corridor, and I'll explain the corridor principle in a bit, other opportunities start to present themselves. So because it came to mind, I want to show you a video on the process, and I think it will be meaningful to you. Was about, hey, it's a little bit overwhelming to think that we're going to start our own venture. But if we could look at it as a process and say, we don't need to start our own venture. We just need to identify an opportunity. And we just need to complete assignment one, which is due on Thursday, and look at these trends that are happening out there and see if we can find something that we're passionate about that aligns with our values and start researching it and start putting together some information where we can identify an opportunity to develop a business concept. And that's it. And we don't have to think any further than that because that would be step one in the process. So it's a powerful concept that maybe will help change the way you think about things. Just kind of a hint. But why? What are the motivations for founding a company? Why do small business owners do what they do? Well, there's four of them that have been identified through the science, and one is personal fulfillment, which is making a difference and working as a team. So again, when we look at chapter two, which hopefully we'll get to tonight, and when we look at the opportunity, we have to think, will this opportunity fulfill me? And then, of course, now you're moving towards personal satisfaction. With personal fulfillment is different than personal satisfaction, and here's why: because personal satisfaction, it means it's intellectually challenging. It's not about making a difference. It's about making a difference, working as a team, and being intellectually challenged, having a passion for your product or service, recognition and respect. Meaning, hey, I'm just not quietly. I mean, a lot of times we want to be quiet entrepreneurs and humble in a way, but at the same time, we want people to notice the hard work and the effort that we're putting into something to build something of value for society. And we want people to at least say thank you, like good job, I see you. I mean, the story that I told you about me traveling to Iowa and all of that kind of stuff. The reality is, I kind of did want the people that I serve, the clients, and certainly the people that are going to pay me, to at least recognize the fact that I put in some significant effort to make sure that I made it to the end destination and delivered the value that I needed to deliver. And by all means, I did it humbly and I explained to them what happened. And when I submitted the invoice, which was this morning, they submitted it for payment immediately, which usually takes 2 or 3 days to submit for payment. But I believe that they did value my extra work and that they did recognize me. And that's meaningful to me. That brings me personal satisfaction. Learning from other business owners, this is an amazing thing. And gosh, I want to highlight this for just a second. I'm going to look around the room and that you're going to learn just as much, if not more, from some of your fellow colleagues. When we have a chance to present our opportunities, when we have a chance to talk about some of our experiences, the best resource that you can give an entrepreneur is another business owner. Best resource you can give a business owner is to put them in a room with other business owners because they have operations and partnerships and relationships and customers and they have facilities that they can share in these resources and they can work together in key partnerships to achieve a goal. So I stopped sharing my screen for a reason because I really do want you to look around this room and to look at some names and to engage in a chat and to be interactive with one another, especially when there's something intriguing that someone said, because there's a good chance that you could very well benefit from somebody else in this class experience or connection or insight. And so that's a good point, is learning from other business owners. Helping employees, that's a big one. It has a lot to do with chapter two, once again, of being fulfilled with integrity and being satisfied with your business. Independence, big one. There was a study on happiness. And of course, everybody wants to study happiness. And one of the aspects of truly achieving a level of happiness was agency. It was agency and it was, I forget, agency and gratitude. These were the two things. Agency and gratitude were highly correlated with someone overall just being happy. And what does it mean, agency? Agency means I have the ability to make my own decisions. I don't feel like I need to get approval from somebody in my family or a spouse or a coworker in order to do what I know is right. So that's agency. And to have independence or to have agency means you're independent. And so again, we go back to empowerment. What empowerment means, a motivator to start a business, and maybe all of you can relate to this, is to have independence, to be your own boss, to control your own future, the discretionary time and flexibility to do what you want when you want to do it. I don't love teaching at night, but I love being able to come home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and being able to do as I wish with my time from 4 o'clock until about 6 o'clock to prepare for this class, to clean my house. And I was never able to do that working outside of the teaching context. I mean, I had to be at work, I had to be at my desk and this kind of stuff. So it was, I feel much more empowered to control and have discretionary aspects over my time. And my point is just to give an example of what it means to have independence. And of course, financial rewards, building personal financial wealth is a powerful thing. So these scientifically tend to be the biggest motivators for founding and starting a company. And last class, I want to give you the reasoning why. Is last class we talked about these different types of ventures. We have a survival venture, a lifestyle venture, a managed growth venture, and a high growth venture. And let's just use the two extremes. Survival means like, yeah, you have a job, but it's not paying enough, and you want to make more money. You're needing to pay your mortgage, and you found yourself getting into debt. Or let's say you're saving up to buy a house, and you can't seem to get out of your just basic living expenses. So therefore, you want to create a business just to earn some more income. That motivation is going to look different in a survival venture than a high growth venture. People who are pursuing high growth ventures, technologically um, big companies. These are companies that might need venture capital and significant funding to build a minimum viable product in order to grow substantially into the future to serve thousands of customers. The motivation to build a high growth company is going to be different than the motivation to build a survival based company. You can see here, there's a good chance that the high growth company is motivated by financial reward, possibly independence, whereas the survival based company might be personal fulfillment and personal satisfaction. So you can see how the people who are striving for let's go back to high growth And managed growth companies might have a little bit more financial reward and independence as a motivator. So why is it important? Because we should know what's motivating us going into this business, or what's motivating us to work in this small company. This is the phenomena. And this placebo effect is what sparked the interest in all of these things called the mindset. The entrepreneurial mindset, the growth mindset, the global mindset, the scarcity mindset, the abundance mindset. All of these literatures started from understanding the placebo effect. So let's set it up so that you get it. So let's just say that we have successfully created a supplement that helps your cardiovascular health so that you could run the mile quicker. So if you take this supplement for 4 or 5 days, your cardiovascular health will improve, and you're going to go from running an 8-minute mile to running a 7-minute and 30-second mile. Okay, so we talk about why the supplement's good. We talk about how you're going to take it. We bring you into a group. And so we know as the experimenters that 10 people are going to take the supplement, and 10 people are going to take nothing. Like it's going to be a useless powder that really has no effect whatsoever other than just looking like a supplement. And so one group gets the placebo, one group gets the actual supplement. And by gone it, both of the groups improve in their mile time. And why is that? Because both groups were around people talking about the mile. Both people were trying to get better sleep because they knew they had to run the mile. Both people were, there was people asking them questions about the mile. They were more attuned to thinking about how they were going to get in shape for the mile. They were sleeping better. So you get the idea. They took a supplement that was nothing. It was nothing, but they improved physiologically because they were around and engulfed and thinking about the performance in this particular sport. So here comes the entrepreneur mindset. When we embrace a mindset, when we understand and think and act like an entrepreneur, it changes the way we behave. It changes the way we live. The mindset changes us. And so again, this is where the spark of all this literature comes from. So what is a mindset? The mindset is the hardest thing for me to teach, and it will be the hardest thing for me to teach in this class. Because if I could teach you accounting, if I could teach you cash flow management, if I could teach you how to create a pro forma so you can demonstrate your sales and tell me how much money you made and tell me how many costs you have, that's easy. There's objective nature to that. Here are your sales, here are your direct costs, here's your gross margin, here's your indirect costs, here's what your tax rate will be, your operating income, here's what your total net profit is. It's pretty straightforward, and we're going to lay that out in class. But what I can't teach you is how to use that information effectively to make decisions in your business. That's the mindset. And the entrepreneur mindset is a phenomenon that happens when we start thinking and acting these ways. So it applies in a lot of different professional contexts, but also can apply in approaching personal issues, family life, community involvement, etc. Well, one of the things to think through when you're surrounding yourself with successful people, I'm assuming that they're in environments that you're not out partying and drinking lots of booze, and that you're talking about things not like how was the weather yesterday, but you're talking about, what did you learn in class and how can you apply that in your life? And it's not just I'm with successful people, it's what you're doing while you're with them that creates this new way of thinking and this new way of acting. So you're right, Sabella. But I challenge you to go a little bit further and say, why is it that when I surround myself by this type of people, that I tend to be thinking and acting one way versus when I'm around these types of people, I'm thinking and acting a totally different way, or or just I'm not with people at all, and I'm just in my own brain and I'm ruminating about how troublesome my life is. That's not nearly as effective as going out in the community and engaging with successful people. I must I must explain further this mindset of what an attitude looks like, because I'm going to ask everybody in this class, and I know you all believe it, is can you affect change? And if your answer to that question is I'm not sure or no, I don't think so, then that's where you begin. You begin because the attitude of an entrepreneur mindset says I can affect change. I can make a difference where I am. I can apply my skills, and I could do something to fix a problem in my community. As even a small one, make your bed, clean the kitchen, go for a walk and say hello to a neighbor, invite people over to your house for dinner. Like these are things that affect change. These are things that build community. Can you do that? Answering that question in your own mind is the premise of this mindset. So the next thing is there's a better way. I love this one. There's always a better way. There's a better way to teach this class. There's a better way to give this presentation. There's a better way to, when you're walking down the street with an entrepreneur and they're just looking at stores and you're walking down the street, the entrepreneur has something called a healthy dissatisfaction, which means that, yeah, they're going to point out things. So they're walking past the store window and they look at the store window and they say, you know what? I think the store window should have more lighting. I think if they move the furniture over this way, they would attract more people to come into their store. And if I was them, I'd put a sign that says, customers welcome, door around the corner. So people know how to access the door. So they always have a critical eye. It's not a complaining eye. It's a healthy dissatisfaction. And so when they also said there's a better way to pick up the trash, there's a better way to get this job done. There's a better way to clean the streets. There's a better way to solve homeless problems. There's always a better way when it comes to this attitude. We can do it differently. We can do it better. Opportunities are everywhere. So all of you came to class today. Maybe you were at home. Maybe you were with your friend. I don't know what you were doing today, But in the process of you being able to attend this class, you passed by a multitude of opportunities, meaning opportunities were everywhere, but you may have not seen them. Why did you not see them? Because you were worried about being late to class, because you're fighting with your boyfriend or girlfriend, because you received an email that bothered you earlier and you were thinking about it, because you're worried about getting your work done, whatever it may be, because you didn't look to see around you the multitude of opportunities. So the attitude is opportunities are everywhere. Embrace innovation, change, and growth. Failure is learning. We talked about this. Optimism, being optimistic about the future, the glass is half full. Passion for what you do. This is a big one. Um, I got a bunch of stories about that one, but we want to move on. And so, moving from attitude to now behavior. Behavior doesn't mean that we're just looking at opportunities. It means we're pursuing opportunities. It means we're innovating. Innovating means we're doing things differently than have been done before. We're creating more value with less resources. So I think about, the quintessential example is Uber, just because of how disruptive and innovative it was in the marketplace. And McDonald's is actually a better example, to be honest. So McDonald's is a fast food company. Yeah, we all know McDonald's, unhealthy food. Whatever your stigma is, like McDonald's. McDonald's is one of the most innovative companies in the entire world. And the reason why is McDonald's is always trying to offer as much value to customers for the least amount of cost. So believe it or not, you can go to McDonald's and get a decent meal for an affordable price, and you could get it very quickly. So they're pushing the lines of how much does it cost and how much value do you get? So the more value for the less cost is the more innovative it is. So this is innovating. It's an innovative process. It's an innovative product. So we'll talk more about innovation, but being able to innovate, not just being creative, but actually applying that creativity to create value in the marketplace is innovation. Persevering, leveraging resources, guerrilla actions, risk management, and learning and adapting. A way of thinking and feeling and a way of acting. This is the entrepreneur mindset. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you can apply this in everything that you do. So I want to give you some examples, and I have two videos I believe that will help with um, this realm of thinking. They could have spent $2 million on traditional media and not have gotten nearly as much impact as that $15,000 stunt that they pulled on putting some free tea stands out in cities with a hidden camera. They're thinking and acting like entrepreneurs. This is the point. How can we be creative with the resources that we had? Millions of views. Media picked up on this, and what was it that fascinated the media? Why did the media pick up on it? They created a competition amongst different cities, and people wanted to know who was the most honest city. And of course, you think about the name of the company, Honest Tea. Now, the company in and of itself is like, hey, you better be honest if you're walking out of the store with that tea. And so it's just beautifully done, and it's a beautiful example of how I want to encourage you to think in this class is like that. How can we use what we have to be creative and to leverage the resources that we have to, create marketing campaigns or add value to the company? And so that's a wonderful example. I'll give you one more that I think is fascinating, and I'll share the backstory in just a minute. So let me share my screen. One or two that I've heard were in construction. And there were some people that I spoke with today that were in construction. And I too was in construction for about 20 years. We built high-end pools all over South Florida. And what I know for sure about construction is that the tools that we have in order to do our craft are very important. And the other thing too is that we are always looking for new tools. Like it's always a fun thing to inquire about new tools. And in addition, you have companies like Home Depot and any other of these retailers that sell tools, and they're just looking for people to come into their store and purchase their tools. They have no affiliation with the tool. They're just in there to provide tools. And they look at a tool as a tool as a tool, whatever. It's a commodity, not Snap-on tools. Snap-on tools looked at a tool as the extension of the worker's hand. They understood that having a relationship with the worker and getting them to feel the tools on the job site would have much more of a proclivity to build a relationship and to get them to purchase the tools and to get excited if they saw a Snap-on trailer or van show up to the work site. So Snap-on decided not only to re-image in the customer's mind what it means to own a tool and use a tool, that's number one, but also delivering the value directly to them while on the job. So if you've worked in construction in the past as well, you know how difficult it is you're sweating, you're out there in the field to now put on a clean shirt, get in a truck, drive to Home Depot and purchase a new tool because something broke or you need something or whatever. Snap-on comes to your job site. You don't even have to leave the job site. They come directly to the job site. So again, I'm trying to help you reframe, in essence, what it means to think and act like an entrepreneur. So when you think about your opportunities and you think about the way you're going to pursue these opportunities, look at it a bit differently. Look at it. Remember, I mentioned in the first class, those who aren't here, that entrepreneurship is where unreasonable meets discipline. It was very unreasonable for Snap-on to franchise their business model and to look at tools as the extension of somebody's hands. I mean, tools have been around for years. They changed the way tools were thought about in the hands of consumers. This is exactly what we're trying to do. So take a look at this video. It's not as exciting as the other one, but it just gives you, in essence, a little bit about, imagine you're in construction. You're working on a job site, and you see this guy pull up to a job site. And he says, "Hey, I see you're on break. Why don't you come over here and take a look at this van I got? Let me come on in the van and let me show you what we're working with. Well, let's just pretend like you need a tool. The question I ask is, would you purchase a tool from this guy? And we'll see what you get.
I'm Adam Wright.
I've never been to Home Depot or Lowe's and walked into the tool section and met a guy that knew so much about tools and it was probably 100% willingly focused on just me and just the tools. And if I had, likely, I had an idea of like what I was needing to do, I didn't know what tool to use. He would probably know. He's like, "What are you trying to do?" I'd say, "Well, I'm trying to fix my toilet." He's like, "Come over here, matey, and let me show you the toilet socket set." "What kind of toilet do you have?" I'd be like, "Well, I don't know." And so he would help me with it. And I just think that this customer service with the product and to be creative and to be focused and to be niched, Snap-on has really got a good deal going because they were able to think and act entrepreneurially. I didn't know that there were so many different types of hammers for all of these different functions. I mean, I knew there was 5 or 6 different types of hammers, but he's not only going to give you the right hammer, but he's also going to educate you on why this is the right hammer. And that's fascinating. Is it the right opportunity? For whatever reason, have been interested in and I'm never going to do it, but I'm fascinated in the Smoothie King franchise because I see how efficient this operation is. All they have is a bunch of supplement powders, ice, and some juice in a blender, and one or two people working behind the thing, and it cost me $12 for a smoothie. I go in there, they make a smoothie for me. It takes like 3 minutes. They use hardly any raw materials, and I pay $12, and I walk out with a bunch of ice and some supplement, and that costs them nothing. And usually there's small footprints in fairly popular retail centers. And when I see a Smoothie King, I feel like this is a good place to go. And so just because of that, it makes me interested in the franchise itself. And so, for instance, if you too have a franchise that you're interested in and you don't have a new business or a venture that you're wanting to pursue, you could very well pursue in this class the opportunity of purchasing and owning a franchise like that. Again, it's not like you're acquiring the resources, like you're actually drawing a contract to be in this franchise. It's just strategizing. What does this look like? Is this an opportunity? Is it feasible? How does this work? Who would I call? Can I meet with them? Have a conversation? This kind of stuff. This is fun. This is fun stuff. So I encourage you to do that. All right. Is the ethics and the values of the entrepreneur. When I worked with my father, I worked with my father for a long, long time. And one of the reasons why I went into business with my father is because I trusted him. We didn't always get along. We actually disagreed most of the time. But my father would always pay his debt. He would always make sure the staff members get paid. He cared about his employees as if they were family members. And he certainly always wanted to do the right thing, regardless of what it costed him. And of course, it costed him a good amount of money. But because of what I just said, I was willing to not only give him my brain while I was at work, but I was also willing to give him my heart, which means that I brought my whole self to work, that I tried my very hardest because I knew that my efforts were being tied into a system that a man with integrity had developed. And that when foundations of businesses are built on integrity, they last into the future. So I'm not even going to say what integrity is because I feel like that story in and of itself should get you thinking, number one, what are your values and why is that important? Oftentimes in business, it gets a bad rap because we hear stories about scandals and abuse of power and all this kind of stuff. And this stuff does happen. Integrity and the interest of major stakeholders is always in question with businesses. And what I encourage you to do as I continue to talk, but also move through these slides, is to develop, along with your opportunity, is to develop some level of ethical standards that you're going to bake into pursuing this opportunity. So what I mean by that is if you see an opportunity and your eyes light up, oh my gosh, this is amazing, and you get caught up with this mindset of, which is a good mindset of abundance, like, oh, I'm going to make a bunch of money and I'm going to do a lot of stuff. Along that path, you could very well trip up and fall into ethical blunders and not do it intentionally, but accidentally. But if you have some sort of code of conduct or some sort of value system that you always say, hey, prior to making a decision, I'm always going to ask myself these questions. If everybody was to make this decision, would it be good? It's kind of like that general question. If this was to end up on the front page of the newspaper tomorrow, would I be proud of it? Would I tell my children to do this if they were faced with the same dilemma? And so you get the idea. Ask yourself these ethical questions. So most frequently observed forms of workplace misconduct: abusive behavior, lying to employees, violation of internet use policies, discrimination against employees, placing employee interest above company interest, health and safety violations, lying to outside stakeholders. This list, if you have been empowered, like we talked about, to be a business owner, you could fall victim to every single thing on this list. And so I'll say it from my perspective. I could fall victim to all of these things on this list. And I shouldn't hold myself to say, oh, well, I'm greater than now. Let me virtue signal. I would never do this. The reality is, I have done some of this stuff. I have lied to employees. I have delivered substandard goods and services. I've delivered substandard goods and services. I sent a proposal to a realtor in the Keys for a lighting installation. And I proposed the lights, and it was like 15 fixtures, and each fixture was like $250 a fixture. Came with installation, all this kind of stuff. And then she came back at me and asked for some additional fixtures. So I was like, okay, wow, look at this. They're interested. So when I proposed additional fixtures, I actually increased the price like $5 per fixture. And she caught on to that. And she absolutely called me out on it. And when I followed up, say, hey, are you still interested in the proposal? She said no, because she found that I increased the price of all the previous fixtures, and that she felt like I was taking advantage of her, and that she's not going to do business with me because of that. And so she called me, and I was like, man, she definitely called me. She called me out, and I lost the opportunity to pursue business with a very popular realtor in the Keys from that point forward. And it's because I engaged in that kind of, which I thought was good for the company. What you can say is you could justify, like, "Well, I was trying to make more money for the company." But at the end of the day, I was hiding money in a proposal to think that I was going to be greedy to make more money, and she ended up calling me out on it. So again, these things, we can fall victim to this stuff all the time. One of the things that you'll hear often in business, and because this is an ethics class and it's certainly not a strategy class, I won't get too into it, but it's this thing called the stakeholder mentality. And a lot of times, small business owners do abide by this. They understand that their decisions will impact the community or the people around them. So if you look at a shareholder, what would be the best interest of the shareholder. This is not the stakeholder view; it's the shareholder view. It's just trying to increase the value of the business for the people who own the business. That's most of what we do here. All we're caring about is how it impacts the shareholders. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is a stakeholder's view. The stakeholder's view is it's not just the shareholders that we're concerned about; it's also the customers, it's also the employees, it's also the community, it's also the government, and our suppliers. You can fit suppliers into that as well. So thinking about how your actions as a small business owner don't just impact the owners of the company, it also impacts all of these other stakeholders as well. The people who like, for instance, an employee, if an owner was to make an ethically compromised decision and do something wrong, and the news got out and this owner got sent to jail, it wouldn't just be the owner and the owner's business that's impacted. It would be the employees that are impacted because they could lose their job, or their company now is branded in a bad kind of way. So they're wearing a shirt around town that has the name of a company on it, where the owner is now in jail and there's a major news story about it. Their reputation is impacted. And of course, you look at the customers who likely will fire them and not want them on the property. The community, now you have this kind of dark cloud over the community. And of course, the government is impacted. Why? Because the business isn't generating enough tax revenue, and therefore the government isn't benefiting from some of that additional tax revenue that that business used to create. So that's just running a example through this stakeholder perspective for you. And so we should consider the stakeholder perspective when we're approaching decisions about our business. I'm not going to go over that. Okay, so promoting the owner's interest is a good thing, but it just needs to be done in an ethical lens. And so let's read these two things. A company's owners have a clear and reasonable right to benefit from the financial performance of the business. This is true. High standards of integrity require an honest attempt to promote the interests of all the owners, as well as the firm's reputation. So it's actually in the interest of the owners to promote their own interest in a way. Caring about customers. Companies that take customers seriously and serve them well are likely to have more of them. There couldn't be more truth in any other statement than that. Companies with integrity recognize the importance of treating their customers with care. Valuing employees, back to the fact of stakeholder perspective. We want to make sure our employees are cared for. Small business owners must be aware of the standards of conduct that guide everyday behavior. Showing proper appreciation for employees as human beings and valuable team members is essential in managerial integrity. And then, of course, additional social responsibilities for small businesses, very important. Abiding by governmental regulations. The chapter, if you read chapter 2, it talks a lot about taxes. And it's a real litmus test for an entrepreneur, because you have control over the financial recording of a company as to whether that's done with integrity, whether that's done well. Because one could easily put personal expenses, if you have control over the books, onto the company and reduce the tax burden and get away with it. But is that the right thing to do? And is that going to benefit the employees and the customers in the long run? So demonstrating the fact that you don't lie and manipulate your numbers is a good test for whether or not you're going to be an integrity driven business owner, or family, or small business. Okay, so let's integrity online. This is a big topic nowadays because I'll say, student, let's pretend like I'm 41 years old. So I think some people in this class are similar age, same age, maybe older than me in some way. But I teach principles of business, which is a freshman level class. And I tend to say, well, you all, and the internet nowadays, what's happening is you can get a lot of information online, and the trustworthiness of that information is compromised at times. And some of it comes from businesses themselves. So if I go online and say, who's the best plumber in the Redlands? If I'm really good with my algorithm and I'm a plumbing business owner, I can somehow get in there, but I don't have any employees. And by the way, I don't even have a license, a plumbing license. But for some reason, I was able to get into the algorithm, and I was able to proliferate a marketing message online. So now you're calling me and you're asking me to come out to your house to fix your toilet. And so that integrity is compromised. You're not demonstrating the truth about your business and how long you've been in business for, and how big your company is, and all this kind of stuff. So this gets into integrity online, intellectual property. Are you stealing other people's business, integrity, and doing business abroad. So I guess because we have somebody in in this class that is doing business in Ecuador, which is doing business abroad, this would be a fun one to read. There are clear cultural differences in other countries, and one of the things that the book emphasizes is in a lot of countries, and Mexico being one of them, it's completely socially acceptable to bribe people in order to get their business. It's also socially acceptable to bribe police officers to let them off. That's just a norm. So, as a person that operates, let's just say in the US, where that's illegal, if one was to then do business in Mexico, the question is, would you fall victim to this thing called ethical relativism? Like, oh, it's wrong here, but it's not wrong everywhere. Like, oh, well, because this culture accepts it, I'm going to go ahead and do it. But I'm relativistic in my ethics. I don't have an ethical standard that I abide by everywhere. So therefore, I fall victim to ethical relativism, the belief that ethical standards are subject to local interpretation. So that this is can be a concern when doing business overseas. Some people pursue certain opportunities overseas because the ethical standards are less stringent. Like, for instance, Nike with the sweat factories, they have Vietnam and say China, they do business over there because they pay people $1 a day and they put them in these horrible conditions, but they produce a ton of sneakers. And they did this for years. And so that would be an example of ethical relativism. Here in the US, it's illegal and they're a US based company, but they're choosing to engage in ethical standards that are so much lower than what they abide to. And the company will lose its credibility because of that. This stuff gets proliferated online and the reputation goes out. So making these kinds of decisions could really do damage to the business. And this goes back to the story that I told about my father and knowing that and a lot of people think, okay, we're in a small business class, we're talking about entrepreneurship. This, all of us are not going to be the bosses and owners of companies one day. It's logical. I mean, I work for the college, I work for Miami-Dade College, but I know that my boss has integrity and therefore I'm willing to work with her. And so that means that this lens that we're going to put on for being critical in a way, judgmental, I may say, of other people's ethical standards is prudent. It's what we should do. And also, in addition to that, it's what consumers do. And it's what consumers will continue to do. So this is fun because it says the ethical edge. Improved financial performance actually comes from high ethical standards. Enhanced brand image and reputation come from high ethical standards. Increased sales and customer loyalty, improved productivity and quality, better recruitment and reduced employee turnover. So I just gave you an example of that. The reason why I love working for Miami-Dade College and teaching with the passion that I teach with is because my chair supports me and because I trust her and she has good ethics. If that wasn't the case, and I saw manipulation and sort of abuse of power in a sense and domineering behavior, there's no chance I would be willing to engage at such a level in my job. So with that being said, the people that you employ, the customers that you serve, are they saying the same thing about you? And can you see the value in operating from these ethical standards and how that, just like when you create value by um, getting a bowling alley and bringing people into your bowling alley and feeding them, like that's valuable. But it's the same kind of value as a business owner when you operate ethically that you create for your community and for your customers. Fewer regulatory inspections and less paperwork, improved access to capital. So there is a quantifiable edge. This is the point. You start talking about ethics and then you get into philosophy and theology and all this kind of stuff, which is true. But then, of course, you can study it and say, okay, when people operate according to ethical standards, does it actually increase value for the business owners and for the shareholders and for the customers? And the answer to that question is yes. And this is kind of telling us that. Underlying values we still provide foundation. So, okay, so this is the last thing I'll talk about. And I don't necessarily, maybe I'll read this slide and then the next two slides. So you're the entrepreneur, you're the consultant. If you're working with another business, you're the student that's going to go through this class. And so I want you to lead your trip in this class. I don't want you to turn in an assignment just because you feel like you need to. I want you to do it right. I want you to, if you need more time, I'll give you more time. I don't want you to just ship it in and copy and paste from some source. I really want you to start leading now with integrity. In a small organization, the influence of a leader, which is you, is more pronounced than it is in a large corporation where leadership can be diffused. A leader's behavior has much greater influence on employees than their stated philosophy does. So, how one behaves is much more important than what one says. A leader's conduct establishes the culture of the company, underscoring what is allowed or encouraged or what is prohibited. So, in a small business context, and for those of you who know small business owners, the way that they behave will likely resonate and change the way their staff members behave. I had a leader in my organization that was very good at performing. He was a landscape designer that was running our landscape division. And we worked with him for about 6 years. And towards the end of working with him, he started doing things in the office that were ethically compromised. I won't get into the details, but let's say there was some infidelity going on that he made me aware of, which is not okay. He was undermining my father's authority on numerous occasions. And what the point of me saying that is he had people working under him. And when I went out to lunch with one of his associate designers, And we just talked, randomly. I could tell that the associate designer looked up to him, sort of, idolized him as this figure that was, holier, that's so talented that he wanted to be like. And at the time, I knew some of the ethical compromises that he was had. And I said at that particular time, I said, I am doing an injustice to the people in my organization, continuing having this man lead with authority here. Because if I allow that, even though he was a good performer, if I allow that to happen, then my integrity is compromised. And therefore, my entire organization is compromised. And the people that are following him are being negatively influenced by his behavior. So as soon as I came to that revelation, which I don't know why it took me so long, I sat down with my father and we had a difficult discussion with him and we parted ways. And I have no regrets. The company suffered because of it. We lost some sales and I struggled finding another leader for a long time. But the reality is it was the right decision. Even though it was a hard decision, it was the right decision. So I'll end there with the talk on leading with ethics, and it doesn't necessarily have an answer, but just the fact that you're asking that question and you notice that in the early days of a business, it's very important that one can succeed, and that just because of that pressure to succeed, that we could fall victim to ethical compromises. Just the fact that you know that will hopefully make sure that it doesn't happen, because you could be successful. There's a company called Thanos, and Thanos was a blood company that they were telling people that they had this technology to take a little bit of blood and run all of these tests on it. And the entrepreneur was said to be the best entrepreneur. I think her name was Elizabeth something. And she raised a ton of money, was super successful, but then she duped her investors. Her technology didn't work. And I think she's in prison right now. And she completely destroyed the company, destroyed all of the employees' careers. And so it runs down into a case study of just that one decision, because she was trying to grow and trying to raise money. Was she doing the right thing? Well, maybe she was doing the right thing, but she did it in a compromised way, which was difficult. So there's definitely that pressure in the beginning of a venture to not give to the community because you don't have the money, and to compromise your ethics. But the goal is to resist some of those pressures. There's something called unintended consequences, which is what Wells Fargo fell victim to, where they try to put incentives out there for people to perform. But in the process of trying to perform, they do things that wasn't the initial intent, but they compromise their ethics because they're competing. And their incentive was to compete and to do well. And along that path, they got lost. But great example. The business books talk about that Wells Fargo example all the time, and you explain that very well. And thank you for being a trustworthy person that's working in an institution that hopefully all of us can trust, like the bank. So think about, what if the banks were compromised, which sometimes they are. And so thank God for ethical leaders and for entrepreneurs who lead with ethics that keep those kinds of institutions intact so we can function. Yeah, for how long? Who knows? Okay, I hope everyone has a great night. I hope you enjoyed class tonight, and I'll see you all on Tuesday. If you have any questions, I'll stay after class and answer them. It's inspirational when you reflect on some of these leaders that one might consider to be heroes and think about their lives